Привет, my polyglot pals. This is Tori again, and I hope you all are staying safe. I get a lot of people who ask me how I got to a level intermediate or higher in a language, and usually I tell them that something that was absolutely instrumental in me learning a language was the use of Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter has a lot of advantages for language learning, and the first one of those is that it's available in so many languages. Harry Potter has 80 translations, including Latin, so you're basically guaranteed to find any of the more popular languages. In addition, there are multiple translations for some languages, Portuguese, Spanish, and English, chief among them. So if you're learning Latin American Spanish or Portuguese, or American English, then there's a separate book than if you're learning UK English or European Spanish or Portuguese, which is a really good resource because different people are going to want to focus on different aspects of the language. I know a lot of people who are learning UK English, so they may be tripped up by some of the vocab in the American English version, and I'm actually going to have a video later talking about some of the differences between UK English and US English. The other awesome part of it being translated in so many languages is there are quite a few audiobooks. Nowhere near 80, but I'm going to go ahead and link the Pottermore store in the description below, which will have quite a few of the different language books for sale, including French, German, Spanish, basically any of the big languages that you'll hear these days, English obviously. The other thing to keep in mind is that even if there is no official tape of a certain language, you may be able to find somebody reading it on YouTube in the language you're looking for, especially right now because J.K. Rowling has allowed anybody to read Harry Potter during the COVID pandemic. Harry Potter is great for learning because you don't have to be very advanced to start. Harry Potter was originally written for an 11-year-old, so that first book is pretty simple. And as the series goes on and the characters get older, the language, the vocab, and the grammar all progress. So by the end, you're going to be reading at the level of a 17-year-old, whereas at the beginning you were reading at the level of an 11-year-old. So it's a great way to move up through the ranks with your language. The final reason why Harry Potter is great is because it's a familiar story to many of us. A lot of the world, especially the English-speaking world, has read Harry Potter or at least seen the movies. If you've only seen the movies, go back, read the books. They really are a delight. So having that familiarity is great because you don't necessarily need to focus on the plot as you're reading through. I have quite a few books in other languages that are much more difficult to read because I've got to figure out how to digest the plot as well as maybe learn new words here and there. With Harry Potter, I know exactly what happens. I know the order it happens, so I can really focus on what the words are. Because Harry Potter comes in so many languages, I actually like collecting them, even for languages I don't intend on learning. I have the Ukrainian version. That's right, it's Ukrainian, not Russian. I have the Spanish version. This is the Castellano version, so this is going to be the European Spanish, not the Latin American Spanish version. Like I mentioned a little earlier on the video, there is a distinction. I have the Italian version. This one is really well loved. You'll see lots of highlights in it. For people who were asking me about my accent in the first video I did, my Italian accent, this is the secret, and I'm going to talk about how to use the Harry Potter books to perfect your accent. I have the Arabic version. This is the second book. I could not find the first book anywhere in Oman. I looked really hard. I could only find the second book and higher, so I grabbed the second book, have not read it, and I'm a little intimidated by the prospect of reading it. I have the Hungarian version. I know that's not the name of the language, but I'm always afraid I'm going to mispronounce it. So if anyone wants to tell me how to pronounce the name of the Hungarian language below, I would really appreciate it. I have no interest in learning Hungarian, but when I was in Hungary a couple of years ago, when I was in Budapest, I picked this up. And of course, I have the American English version. You'll know if it's the American English version by something really obvious if you are a non-native English speaker. The American English version is the Sorcerer's Stone. The British English version, the UK version, is going to be the Philosopher's Stone. So just keep that in mind if you're an English language learner. If you already speak English, you probably already know that. For my method, you're going to need a few supplies. The book in your target language, the book in your native language, and if at all possible, the audiobook in your target language. You also are probably going to want to have Anki or a notebook so that you can take notes and make flashcards. The first thing you're going to do is open your target language book to the first page. My camera is having a hard time adjusting to the difference in light. And open up your audiobook. You'll hit play and just read the first sentence along with the audio.
El señor y la señora Dursley, que vivían en el número 4 de Private Drive, estaban orgullosos de decir que eran muy normales, afortunadamente.
Awesome. Were there any words you didn't understand? It's probably pretty likely that there were, and that's okay. Before looking those up, if you want accent perfection, there is a secret. What you can do actually is slow the audio down, maybe to half speed, and say the words with the narrator, and then slowly bring it up back to full speed. You should do this anyways because it is a great way to get a feel for the language in your mouth. After you've gone ahead and perfected your accent, go through, read it one more time out loud without the narrator. So after you've read it out loud and feel your accent is improving and that you could be understood in the language, it's time to actually read for comprehension. So go through and read that sentence aloud once more without the audiobook, just so you feel comfortable, and then read it in your head. Now might be the time when you don't recognize words or phrases, and that's okay. The first thing you should try to do is get it through context clues. But if you can't get it through context clues, the next thing you should do is open your native language Harry Potter book. So for me, I will open an English language Harry Potter book and read through the same sentence in English. Hopefully that makes it clear what words you've missed. You'll notice that things are not a one-to-one translation in the books. So for example, in the Spanish Harry Potter book, this is the Castellano version, the first sentence is El señor y la señora Dursley que vivían en el número 4 de Private Drive estaban orgullosos de decir que eran muy normales afortunadamente. However, in the English version, the first sentence is Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Private Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. Now, if you speak both Spanish and English, you'll have heard the difference immediately. In English, we use a phrase that's pretty common in the English language, that's thank you very much, and the Spanish version goes for afortunadamente. Now, I know that in other languages, they also say thank you very much. The Italian version looks like it does use thank you very much. Reading your native language version and reading your target language version side by side allow you to compare whole phrases. So maybe Spanish doesn't have a version of thank you very much, though I guess I could maybe see somebody saying something like gracias tanto. I don't think I've ever actually heard that personally. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm not, native level speaker fluent. It just means it's not something I hear a lot or didn't hear in Spain and Honduras. One thing that, for example, tripped me up with the Italian is in the second sentence, it talks about Mr. Dursley having this big mustache, like a magnificent mustache, and the Italian version says paio di baffi. And if I just looked up paio di baffi, that's a little confusing because it literally translates to pair of mustaches. But in English, mustache is singular, not plural, so saying a pair of mustaches would be a little weird. So that's a really good reason too to read the book in your native language alongside the book in your target language. Hopefully you'll be able to tell that afortunadamente is not a direct translation of thank you very much. So this is a good time, if you need, to look up any words or phrases that weren't well clarified by reading the book in your native language. From here, you should make a flashcard, or at minimum, write down in a notebook any new word or phrase. Again, if you go back to my Anki video, you'll see that I do not recommend just writing word translation on your flashcards. You should really consider putting in a picture and even using the sentence from Harry Potter. Now, after you've done all that, you can go ahead and move on to the next sentence or paragraph, depending on how advanced you are at the language. Sentence by sentence is better if you're still a really new learner. Paragraph by paragraph is better if you have just a little bit more comfort with the language and you understand more of the words rather than less of them. It is a tedious process, I'm not going to lie. If you take a look in my time book, which I showed earlier, you'll notice that there are tons of highlights. These are sentences that I actually understood every single word of without having to look anything up. And you can see that on some pages, it was basically none at all. I read this about a month into starting my Italian language journey, so there were times when I had to learn a lot of words, and then there were other times when I knew more and more. So just something to keep in mind. Whatever works for you, play around with different techniques. I originally started with underlining things that I really didn't know and highlighting things I really did know, and eventually I just moved to highlighting the things I really did know and working on the things I didn't know outside of the book. Leave a comment below if you've ever used the Harry Potter method to learn a language, and is your way different than my way? How so? And if you do want to see more videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and for now, ciao!